In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 major reasons why now is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin Metro. Almost everything I'm going to talk about has come from first-hand conversations with qualified buyers who at one point in the last 6 to 9 months were thinking about buying a house in the Austin Metro, but either decided to cancel their contract, pause their home search, or drop out of the market completely. Now, the first reason why this is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin Metro are the high mortgage rates. The rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage has been hovering around 7% for nearly 6 months now, and this is 4 percentage points higher than what it was a year ago. These higher rates mean that a buyer is going to pay more interest over the term of the loan, and they're going to have less buying power because they're not going to be able to qualify for the same amount of money. Earlier this year, we got a glimpse of how a change in mortgage rates can impact buyer activity. Rates peaked at 7% in November and remained steady until January. Then they began to inch back closer to 6%, and the number of mortgage applications increased. Up until when these rates began to increase about a year ago, everyone had become used to rates around 3%. And the idea of paying twice that amount was something that most people were either not willing or not ready to accept, especially when most experts were forecasting that this rise in interest rates was only going to be temporary. Here are a couple of forecasts from May of 2022. The National Association of Realtors forecasted that mortgage rates would be around 5.4% by December. Realty Track forecasted between 5.25% and 5.5%. And Fannie Mae forecasted rates around 5.1% for the remainder of 2022. Well, they were all wrong. And anybody who is waiting for a 5% interest rate is still waiting, and probably will continue to be waiting. Now, interest rates are something that a buyer has no control over. But if you are hoping to get a lower interest rate, you might consider new construction. All of the large builders have their own mortgage companies, and most all of them are offering rates that are lower than what you'd be able to get on a resale home. The second reason why this is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin area are the prices on the homes. You might want to check out this video, because I discussed trends in the median price in the Austin area over the last 2 to 3 years. To summarize, prices shot up in both the spring of 2021 and 2022 and have been on a downward trend since July of 2022. Now, the expectation, especially from the buyers I've been talking to, are that these prices are going to continue to decline. Everybody's been throwing around the term housing crash because most people have a very short-term memory. If you're going to limit your analysis to the housing market to the last 20 years, the only thing that comes close to what we're experiencing now is the housing crash of 2008. Now, on the one hand, median prices in the Austin area have already declined 20% since the peak in July 2022. And that kind of percentage is already in crash territory. Now, on the other hand, if more and more buyers continue to sit on the sidelines, that decreased demand could continue to put downward pressure on prices. But the one thing that's missing from this current housing market are a large number of forced sales. Anytime someone is forced to sell a house, they're usually going to lose money. The best example is a foreclosure. In that situation, the house is sold regardless of the market conditions, and the seller takes whatever it is they can get. But in a market like we're in now, the seller always has the option of taking the house off the market and waiting until market conditions improve. We saw a lot of this happening last fall. Sellers weren't able to get the kind of money that they thought they should be able to get, so they took the house off the market waiting for the spring, expecting that when they relisted the house that they were going to be able to get the kind of money that they wanted. Well, spring is here, and we're continuing to see price reductions. So most of those sellers are still not able to get what they thought they should be able to get back in the fall. And frankly, they're probably never going to get the kind of money that they could have gotten a year or two ago. So in the current market, we have not seen a large number of foreclosures or other types of forced sales on a large scale. But that could change depending upon what happens in the economy, which is the third reason why now is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin area. But before we get into that, let me say this. I make these videos to provide information that will help you make better decisions when you're buying or selling real estate. But the only way I'll know is if you like them or if you find them useful is if you comment on the video, like the video, or subscribe to my channel. Also, if you're thinking about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, I would love to help you out. You can shoot me a text or an email or schedule a phone call on the YouTube channel page. But enough about that. Let's get back to the third major reason why now is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin area: uncertainties in the economy. Another buzzword that has become almost as cliche as housing crash is imminent recession. This graph shows growth in the GDP compared to the previous quarter. You'll notice it was negative quarter over quarter in the first half of last year, but turned positive in Q3 and Q4. And this was in spite of the Fed's aggressive monetary policy. Now, I'm not going to try to analyze the U.S. economy, but I will say this. When people become concerned about job losses or income cuts or inflation, they become much more conservative in their spending. And when all of the primary news outlets are constantly talking about an imminent recession, people are going to be worried about it. The Consumer Confidence Index attempts to quantify how people are feeling about the future. You'll notice there was a steep drop in the early days of the pandemic and another one shortly after interest rates began to rise. It bottomed out in late 2022, has been trending upward most of this year. Currently, we're about where we were in 2017, but certainly not as high as we were in 2019. People will buy homes in spite of high interest rates and sometimes in spite of high home prices if they feel confident about their jobs and their finances. If you are not feeling confident about one or both of those, then maybe now is not the best time to commit yourself to a 30-year mortgage. The fourth reason why now is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin area are the high property taxes. Most areas in the Austin metro are going to have a tax rate between 2 and 3%, which means that on a $500,000 house, you'll be looking at property taxes somewhere in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. The homestead exemption will allow you to cap the year-over-year increase in your appraised value at 10%. But that is only if that house is your primary residence. In other words, it does not apply to second homes or investment properties. In 2022, we saw appraised values increase 40 to 50%, which means that everybody saw the dollar amount of their property taxes increase at least 10%. And taxes on some investment properties went up at the same percentage as the appraised value. Now, this is a time of year when the county appraisal districts begin to mail out appraisal notices and post that same information on their website. From what I've seen, Williamson County appraisal values have decreased between 10 and 20%. Travis County has seen decreases, but it isn't as large as those in Williamson County. From what I've seen, the decrease in Travis County are in that 5 to 10% range. Now, one positive is since appraisal values are actually going down, we may not see as many appraisal protests this year. The thing about property taxes is you're going to have to pay them whether you got a mortgage or not. And property taxes are one of the major reasons why some people choose to rent versus buy. High property taxes may not be the primary reason why now is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin area, but when you combine that with some of the things we've talked about earlier, it could tilt the scales that way. Now, the fifth reason why now is the worst time to buy a house in the Austin area is because Austin is losing some of its appeal. It's becoming a less desirable place that people want to move to. U.S. News publishes an annual list of the best places to live in the United States. Back in 2019, Austin was number one. In fact, Austin had been the number one city to live in for 3 years straight. But in 2023, Austin didn't even make the top 10, primarily because of housing costs. Now, the other thing about living in Texas that has gained a lot of attention over the last couple of years are the conservative politics at the state level. Austin has traditionally been the most liberal city in Texas, but issues like gun control and abortion, which are determined at a state level, has made Texas as a whole a lot less desirable for more liberal-leaning folks who are considering where they want to relocate to. I mentioned this earlier, but this video provides some useful analysis about the median prices in the Austin area over the last 2 to 3 years. Check it out, and you might have a different perspective on what's really going on out there. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell. That way you'll get a notification every time I post a new video.